Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 5:13 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, July 3rd, the eve of July 4th. Hope you all have a good July 4th tomorrow. Probably will try to make a video. I'm not positive if I will, but we have a one-game showdown slate tonight in the WNBA. Going to do something a little bit different. I'll show every single person watching this my projections, see if people can utilize those to actually bink the $5,000 to first tournament. It starts at 3 p.m. Eastern time today, so there's a heads up as well. If you're watching this before then, you get a chance to play. The projections that you're going to see are the exact same projections that I give to people over on Patreon. For the people who do follow me on Patreon and are subscribers, thank you so much. I am not going to be doing this all the time, just every so often for just a showdown slate, which we usually only get them once every 2 or 3 weeks, where it's just an individual showdown slate with no other games at all on them. But it's just a better way to deliver content. Otherwise, if I'm trying to give 5 early interests on a showdown slate, well, I pretty much just told you the only plays that I have interest in. So I'll just go through the projections overall, and then later on Patreon, I will do a podcast filtering down probably closer to around noon, filtering down the 18-person player pool to probably 8 to 9, and then really from there it's just a matter of getting the right captain and filling in the rest of the pieces. A WNBA slate, there's not many pieces to really choose from usually. On the bottom tiers, you're usually not getting many players outside of the starters and maybe one off the bench seeing any minutes, similar to the NBA playoffs, except this is every single night in the WNBA. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some things that I think are interesting for this one-game slate. I'm sure like 5 people will watch this video because it's a showdown slate on a Wednesday afternoon in the WNBA. But if you are watching this video, if you could hit me with a like button, it'll help it get a little bit more reach. If you hit me with a subscribe button, that helps me out the most, especially heading into the NFL season. I greatly appreciate it if you get any value from this content. Realistically, there'll be a few hundred people that do watch this video. And if you're not subscribed yet, just take those extra couple of seconds. It might not mean a lot to you, but it does mean a lot to me, and just really trying to make this into sort of a little side hustle and continue it going along. So that said, thank you for being here at the channel. Let's just get on into the video. So just 2 injuries to be aware of is Rebecca Allen. I've reached out to the beat writer for Rebecca Allen, waiting to hear back. It's been 3 weeks since they said that we would know more information in 2 weeks, so really bad in terms of just disclosing news overall the WNBA, although really better this year. However, is doubtful. We just have no other news. Jewell Loyd is going to be out once again and probably going to be out at least another week, if not more. A week would be very fortunate for Seattle to get her back. So she's out. This is going to affect Jordan Canada and Sammy Whitcomb. Sammy Whitcomb, who's now seen an average of 30 minutes in the last 2 games without Jewell Loyd. Somebody who I didn't think was going to get the bulk of the Loyd, so it would be Shavonte Zellis, but Zellis has only seen 11 and 12 minutes, so it seems like Whitcomb is the one getting the main benefit from Loyd being out. Rebecca Allen, also her being out, is going to continue to help Rashonda Gray, who had 11 rebounds 2 games ago, was a career record, had 15 rebounds in the last game in a blowout, then breaking that once career record. So let's get on to the target offense sheet. I will also announce as we go to the target offense sheet and I blow it up that there are projections, the ones that you're about to see on Patreon, link down below. I also do exclusive podcasts. Been traveling this week, but we'll be doing an exclusive podcast today for patrons as well. So after today, if this is your first time viewing it, I won't be just giving out the projections through this. You would have to go and get them over on Patreon. It's just a way for creators, a site for creators to have extra content and to make extra income as well, but also obviously with the goal of overwhelming value. So with that said, there's just one game today, and the pace, these are 2 of the better pace teams in the league. More so, I shouldn't say that. More so, it's New York being the better pace team in the league, a top 3 team in pace, and then Seattle's around mid to bottom end. What the pace does today is it's going to give you a little bit of a bump down spot, as you would imagine, and then it's going to give you a little bit of a bump up spot for Seattle. I right now have this projected as almost a pick 'em based on the way that these paces play, right? A little bit of a bump down for New York, Seattle, based on the way that the matchups are for both teams. You're going to have a neutral forward matchup, neutral middle of the league for New York today in terms of going up against Seattle. You're going to have one of the worst matchups in terms of New York's guards going up against Seattle, but we have to remember that's being factored in with Jewell Loyd being out there for 32 minutes a game, so it should be a little bit easier today. And then on the other end of the coin, you're going to get the guards for Seattle having the best matchup today against New York. Yes, New York's guards are the worst in the league as of fantasy purposes. And then you're going to get a tougher matchup right around neutral, though, for the forwards for Seattle. So that said, the over-under, look, this can change. Seattle might be a 4-point favorite at home. And now the fact that I'm thinking about them being home, I don't think New York's going to be a 1-point pick-em, especially with a tough matchup for their guards. So I imagine this just flips the switch a little bit, more team totals going to Seattle, and then you're just going to get a little bit of a spread probably to Seattle. It should be out earlier since it's a 3 p.m. game. I'm doing this at 5 a.m. in the morning, but it should be out a little bit earlier in the day. So once it is, I'll update that in the projections, which should tweak the projections a little bit. But for a 1 game slate, and really just in general, the only way it really matters is usually NBA, like 9 or 10 game slates, or even more when we're tweaking projections for team totals. It kind of bumps players up a little bit above each other, but there's only like 10 players, 15 players that are even viable today, so it's not going to do too much. That said, I'm going to skip over the early interests because me telling you 6 people that I like is pointless because there's only going to be like 8 people to even play today. And we're going to cut to the projections. So right now I have the projections blocked. I will show those since I already said that I would. And I will show those blown up a little bit better. Bear with me. And we will go. Cool. So we'll go 137. There you go. A little puzzle of fitting it all together. So this is filtered right now just by salary. So priced up to price down. It's by their non-captain price. And then we can talk about captains in a little while. But just the way that I'm going to be doing this, and I don't want to filter down this yet on here, but I do want to talk about just some interesting spots overall in the slate. So you have 2 studs on this slate in Tina Charles and Natasha Howard. Trying to differentiate between the 2 of them, I think, is the wrong idea. I think it's going to be a very chalky idea to play both of them, probably get to one of them potentially in your captain spot. I have them very much at almost a pick 'em. The fact that Natasha Howard is a better point per minute producer is usually better than getting Tina Charles for a more expensive price. But Tina Charles over the last 4 games has had 35 plus minutes in each of those games. Have her average or right now at 36 with no Wnba. Since Wnba left, no Rebecca Allen. The forward depth on this team is just gone. So Charles has been out there for a lot more time. So with that, I get Charles at 37.2 fantasy points. Natasha Howard being the better point per minute producer, seeing 33 minutes in the last couple of games. I have her, if she plays 33 today, at 38.9. Now, if you think Natasha Howard goes closer to 32 or 31, or she plays 32 minutes, she's literally at the exact same points as Tina Charles. So I do prefer Natasha Howard just based on point per minute. Natasha Howard's matchup is a little bit tougher against Charles, right? But take into account that matchup, I think they're like the 4th or 5th toughest matchup in the league for forwards. It's not going to have Wnba out there, who was out there for the majority of this season. It's not going to have Rebecca Allen out there. There's really no other depth. It's Rashonda Gray, who's been good at securing boards, but no threat defensively to Natasha Howard. And then it's Tina Charles, right, for the forward. So there is a lack of depth there. So I think that number is a little bit swayed if you're finding specific numbers in my models or other people's. And then Tina Charles has as neutral as a matchup as it gets, but it's still up against Natasha Howard. The minutes, though, for Tina Charles are secure. The more minutes you get out of a player, especially a productive player, over a fantasy point per minute in Charles this year, she's 1.05 for today. I have her projected for 1.02 on the year. When you get that many minutes, 36 at really a minimum if this game stays close, with the upside of playing 38 or more, yeah, it's really hard to pass up because there's just more opportunities to score points, obviously, but minutes equal money in the WNBA and in the NBA. So I have interest in Charles. I have interest in Howard. I think getting to both of them in the lineup is the right build to go to. Kia Nurse today. So we talked about the guards for New York being in a tough spot today against Seattle. So what does that mean? You have Kia Nurse, you have Brittany Boyd, you have Asia Durr. I mean, you could also throw into that mix if you wanted to Tanisha Wright, who saw 20 minutes for the last couple of games or so. But for the most part, it's Kia Nurse and Brittany Boyd. Asia Durr is not the greatest fantasy point per minute producer anyway, so I kind of scratch her off right away, even with the elevated minutes. So Kia Nurse and Brittany Boyd are getting a really difficult matchup today. But like I said, keep in mind, Jewel Lloyd is not there. Jordan Canada is there, who's good on defense. Sammy Whitcomb is pretty average or decent above average on defense. So it's still a tough matchup, but there's no Jewel Lloyd out there in terms of trying to limit this New York team as much as it kind of appears that they can. Kia Nurse at 9,600, I'm going to avoid that price point because of the matchup that I just said. I don't think it's as tough of a matchup as it seems on paper with no Lloyd out there. And I do think Kia Nurse, who has seen big minutes in the last couple of games, those minutes got a little bit limited in the last game due to a blowout. I think she sees 34 minutes today is what I have her at. If she sees 36, that's even better. But at $9,600, I want to get to other places on this slate, especially if I'm going to end up putting Charles or Howard, or if I'm playing multiple lineups, into the captain spot. I would avoid Kia Nurse as of right now. Going down a little bit more, I think Jordan Canada is still a fine play. Jordan Canada is too cheap right now. $8,200. This should be a $9,000 player on a showdown slate when there's no Jewel Lloyd still. She's going to see 30-plus minutes, and she has a very, very, very beneficial matchup, the best in the league as of right now, against these New York guards. Alicia Clark is sort of this dark horse on the showdown slate for me today at $7,600. Should see over 30 minutes today. Goes up against this New York team that we said is sort of this neutral matchup without the Wnba and the Rebecca Allens out there, and it's just kind of Tina Charles riding the ship in gray. I think she's sort of this dark horse at 7,400 that will get forgotten. I think people might go down to the cheaper options in Rashonda Gray's and Sammy Whitcomb's, and I don't think there's anything wrong with those options. Rashonda Gray, Sammy Whitcomb should both see 28 plus minutes tonight, and they're both below $7,000, and they've both been really productive, especially Rashonda Gray, who's coming off of an 11 rebound game and a 15 rebound game, double-double as well. So the 1.03 fantasy point per minute that you're getting out of Rashonda Gray, yeah, that's really, really good. And now you're going to tell me that she's 28 minutes or more in a decent matchup, a neutral matchup at 6,600. I like that. Sammy Whitcomb's matchup, like we said already for Jordan Canada, is really good against New York. I like that at 6,200. Now, can Whitcomb's rug be swept up from under her? Yeah, she can see 15 minutes tonight, and Zealous can be the one getting 23 minutes out of nowhere. The last two games have not shown me that that's the case. Keep an eye on the starting lineup news. That should be indicative of a lot of things here today. Asia Dur we touched on. Asia Dur's point per minute. On a showdown slate, anything can happen, right? Her 0.63 point per minute can totally change to being like a 0.85, but it just doesn't seem likely today, at least in my book. It's not a player that I want to take a chance on at 7,400 when you have two clearly better point per minute options. It definitely in Gray and in Sammy Whitcomb below her, who will see just as much minutes today, and Whitcomb being in a better matchup. Shavonte Zealous is, I think, the dark horse, like I said, in the bottom range. So we said the dark horse in the mid-range is sort of this Alicia Clark, who has not played as well as she should or can this season. Gets a bit of a difficult matchup today, especially for her skill set. Not the greatest point-per-minute producer. Pretty much average. The WNBA average is 0.84. She's at 0.82, so slightly below average. But again, it's a one-game sample size. Trying to get different and off the board today makes sense, especially since this video is showing my projections. You kind of know where some good value lies, some good plays lie. So I think trying to get a little bit different, go against the projections, going to an Alicia Clark is not a bad idea. Look, it's not an optimal cash play. I would rather not play her in cash, although you probably shouldn't play showdowns for cash anyways. But if you're talking big field tournaments, if you're going to play the 5 or 6 best plays on the slate in terms of price and upside, well, so is everybody else. Also, hitting on that, you should be leaving money on the table on these showdown slates. For the WNBA, I think $500 is enough. Like we were leaving $1,700 to $2,000 in the NBA Finals, but you're only going up against another 5,000 people instead of 40,000 people like you were in the NBA Finals. So it's a lot easier to have a unique lineup when there's an eighth of the field or a tenth of the field. So I'll leave $500 or more on the table today, even if it means having to play an Alicia Clark over, probably not a Jordan Canada, but an Alicia Clark over Brittany Boyd, or having to play a Sammy Whitcomb over a Rashonda Gray, something like that, right? Just leave money on the table. Even if you think it's suboptimal, leaving the money on the table makes you more optimal in terms of winning the whole thing. Because if you're going to split tonight with 50 other people and you're each going to make $100 on your $5 buy-in, you might tell me, Sal, but that's a good thing. We made $100. No, it's not, because if I told you tonight that you're facing 5,000 people with the upside of playing $100 if that lineup hits, because I can tell you right now, if you spend all your money tonight, you are not winning the whole thing by yourself unless you're putting like Shavonte Zealous in the captain spot, right? Unless you're putting somebody just way off the board in the captain spot. But if you spend all of your money, you're not going to win alone tonight. It's just not going to happen on a showdown slate with so few options in the WNBA. Whereas in the NBA, yeah, you had viable options off the bench in those postseasons, probably at least 1 to 2 from each team that had the upside of being in the captain spot, and you had like 4 starters on each team that had the upside of being in the captain spot each night. Tonight, you realistically have like 4 players that have captain upside, maybe 5 if you really want to stretch. So with that said, captain spot, I'm always going to be going for the highest projected players. So for me, the captain spot is going to be distinguished between Tina Charles and Natasha Howard. I do think Jordan Canada is a very interesting captain option, as she is somebody who I can see scoring right around the same amount of points as those players. Now, as forwards, Tina Charles and Natasha Howard has the much easier routes to that spot, and it's kind of indicative of their fantasy point per minute being over 1 fantasy point per minute, the only players outside of Rashonda Gray to have that. Jordan Canada at 0.91 is pretty close for a guard. Like we said, she has the best matchup on the court tonight as a guard going up against this New York team, the worst against the guards. So I do think Jordan Canada is captain viable. And then if you wanted a cheap option, the 4th player I would go to is Rashonda Gray, somebody who's just been getting the boards a lot easier as of late. The matchup today is neutral. Maybe she only is as good, those 15 rebounds in very beneficial matchups like we saw the last time out. But I think for the cheap end, if you're trying to just squeeze in all the top end plays, your Tina Charles, your Howard, your Canadas, even fit in a Boyd or a Nurse, I think that's the way to go. I think trying to pay up to fit in a Kia Nurse is the wrong decision. Getting to a Boyd is okay. I still don't like that, but I do think that there is upside at that price tag for Brittany Boyd. Just this matchup against Seattle is a difficult one. Now, can Kia Nurse get on track here? And yes, like there's a real chance Kia Nurse could play 37 minutes tonight. And if you're playing 37 minutes on a showdown slate, there's a real chance you're scoring 30 fantasy points. You score 30 fantasy points on a showdown slate, you're going to be needed no matter what your name is. If Tina Charles or Natasha Howard only score 30 tonight, they're still probably going to be needed. at least one of them in your, not maybe not captain spot, but in your utility spot. So that's the way that you should shoot for tonight. I think leaving money on the table, as always, if you follow me at all, is the way to go. $500 or more in the WNBA should be enough. The more you leave, the more unique that you can ensure you will be. In terms of this slate, if I had to give you early interest right now, and then I'll filter down the player pool later on, I kind of went through them throughout this video. I never really like to get players that are projected for less than 10 points on a showdown slate, but anything above that, even if it is right on 10 points like we have Kaylina, Mosquito, Lewis today, then yeah, I would go to there if need be. Now, I'm not saying to play her, but I would consider her since she is projected for some sort of minutes over 15 today. So that's where I'm at as of right now. Hopefully this helps. If you did get help or you think this is interesting, the player projections that I use, please like the video. Please comment down below what you find interesting. And also the biggest thing, if you can hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you're a returning subscriber, helps me out a ton. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS for updates. Yesterday I was not as update heavy, but I was on a date hanging out with the girlfriend. So appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. My name's Sal. Best of luck today, everybody. Peace out, gang. You can also get these projections over on Patreon for all the other days if you found them helpful. See ya.